everyone, and welcome to my second video. And before I begin, look at that T-Rex. It looks like it has a seizure. I was trying to make it cutesy and all that, but it didn't work out, so let's just ignore that and let's talk about this video. This video is on molecules to metabolism from 2.1 of the IB curriculum, and the orange part shows the table of contents just for reference. A mini chemistry lesson, so if you guys don't know the difference between atoms, compounds, molecules, just keep on watching this video. Now let's look at the right part, the pure substances part. So let's talk about some different pure substances. Atoms are just made up of one type of atom. Compounds are two or more atoms joined through bonds, and atoms may be of the same element or different elements. Molecules are the smallest amount of a substance, and mixtures are different elements. Molecules are compounds that are not chemically joined together, so they're just together and not chemically joined. Now let's look at the left part. We're going to talk about the atomic structure. So atoms have protons and neutrons in the center. In this case, it has 6 protons and 6 neutrons, and the blue parts are the neutrons, the orangish parts are the protons. Then it has the electrons. Electrons are represented by the pink circles on the outside, and it occupies shells. So in the first shell, it has 2 electrons, and in the second shell, it has 4 electrons, and they want to comply by the octet rule. Although there are exceptions to the octet rule means that they want to have 8 valence electrons. So there's only 4 valence electrons right now, so if you add 4 more, it fulfills the octet rule. Now, can you guys guess what this atom is? Well, you guys have to look at the periodic table, but I'll just give you guys a moment to guess. Okay, so it is carbon. Why? Well, it has 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, and 6 protons. And it also has 4 valence electrons, and if we look at group 4, we have carbon. Carbon has an atomic number of 6, and there are 6 electrons. So carbon is the only thing that can be represented by this diagram. Now let's talk more about carbon. Carbon can form 4 covalent bonds because it wants to fulfill the octet rule. Now, carbon is very, very versatile, so there are many different compounds of carbon. First, it can form branches like methane right there. It's CH4. It can form chains of carbon, rings of carbon like the benzene molecule over there, and life is based on carbon compounds. Compounds whose molecules contain carbon are organic compounds. So the main carbon compounds are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And carbons are essential to life. Life without carbon does not exist. So let's talk about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And hydrogen to oxygen ratio is 2:1. So for example, glucose. Glucose is represented by the diagram on the right, and glucose formula is C6H12O2, and it has a hydrogen 12 and oxygen 6, so it has the ratio of 2:1. And carbohydrates are pasta, rice, and stuff like that that supply quick energy, and if you don't burn those calories off, then they become fats. So you guys should be careful about carbohydrates when you guys are on a diet. Lipids also contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and they consist of 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acids. They're called triglycerides, and triglycerides are represented by the diagram on the right. Glycerol has a formula of C3H8O3, just for a fun fact. And lipids include fats, oils, and waxes. You know, if you guys are on a diet, you guys want to avoid lipids, but don't not eat them because lipids are essential to life in moderation, and they function in energy storage. Proteins contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, along with nitrogen and sometimes sulfur, and they are composed of 1 or more chains of amino acids, and the diagram on the right is an amino acid, and I'm going to talk about this later in this video. Nucleic acids are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen and phosphorus bonded together. And there are 2 types of nucleic acids, deoxyribonucleic acid, which is also known as DNA, and ribonucleic acid, or RNA. And they consist of polymers of nucleotides. And the diagram on the right shows a nucleotide, which I'm going to talk about in another video. Now let's talk about drawing molecules. First, we have to know some chemical groups: hydroxyl, amine, carboxyl, and methyl. It's good to remember the structures of these to draw molecular compounds, so just keep those in mind. Let's talk about the molecules now. Ribose has a molecular formula of C5H10O5, and it's a sugar found in RNA. It's a 5-membered ring with a side chain, so it has 5 carbon atoms, Now, glucose is similar to ribose, except for the fact that it has one more ring and one more carbon. It has a formula of 6C6H12O6, and if you guys look at ribose and glucose, they both have an H to O ratio of 2 to 1, so they are carbohydrates. And glucose is a 6-membered ring with a side chain, so it has 6 carbon atoms. Now let's talk about fatty acids. Fatty acids have carbon atoms in an unbranched chain, and in one end they have carboxyl groups, which is represented by the blue parts, and on the other end, carbon is bonded to 3 other hydrogen atoms and 1 carbon. Saturated fats are carbon bonded by single bonds, and unsaturated fatty acids have at least 1 double bond between carbon atoms. And if you see, there's a lot of carbon chains linked together, but there can be more or less. It's depending on the situation. And if we look at the unsaturated fatty acid, the red part shows the double bond between the carbons. Now let's look at amino acids. Amino acids contain carbon that are bonded to 4 things, right? Because carbon forms 4 bonds. First, it's bonded to an amine group. We looked at this group before, right? That's why you guys should remember those groups that I talked about before. And then a carboxyl group, which you guys knew before, a hydrogen atom, and then finally the R group, which is a variable part of amino acids. It changes depending on the situation. Now let's talk about metabolism. First, there are anabolism and catabolism. Okay. So metabolism is all chemical reactions occurring inside of cells, and it's broken down into anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism is the building of complex molecules from simple compounds, and examples include protein synthesis using ribosomes, DNA synthesis during replication, photosynthesis, including production of glucose from carbon dioxide and water, and then the synthesis of complex carbohydrates including starch, cellulose, and glycogen, and catabolism. If you look at words like catastrophe, it sounds like a disaster, and disasters include breaking down things, right? And another way to memorize this is cats. Cats usually break things, right? So catabolism is the breakdown of complex molecules into simpler molecules, and examples include digestion of food in the mouth, stomach, and small intestine, or digestion of complex carbon compounds, or cellular respiration, in which glucose or lipids are oxidized to carbon dioxide and water. Okay, so this is a basic summary of molecular biology. I hope you guys liked this video, and thank you guys for watching. See you guys next time.